Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Hollow and today we're talking about Amazon's upcoming MMO, New World. I have so much good stuff to talk about with this game, a lot of positive stuff, a lot of hopeful stuff. My god, the combat looks good, but it doesn't change the fact that the core of this game doesn't seem to have an identity anymore, as though they have no idea what kind of game this actually is or what it's trying to be. But let's just jump into this discussion with some details about the game before I explain what I mean by that. So for the story, back in December, we got our first major cinematic trailer for New World, and to say the least, it was so cool. Visually impressive, displaying a fascinating world with strange creatures fueled by a seemingly neutral energy that's been corrupted over time into something terrible. Set in a fantasy 17th century world, you're going to embark into this newly discovered land, an island named ANTHEM. We'll be playing as explorers, fresh off the boat and looking to learn more about the history of this place. A fallen civilization, strange magical beast, monsters created by a corruption that seeps across the land. There's a lot of strange stuff happening here, and you know, we're looking to find out why. Also, it's a fresh land, and you know, we gotta conquer it and fight to the death because we're the real monsters. It's a simple setup of mystery and fantasy in an arms race environment. I like the foundation a lot, and it left me super intrigued to see where the game goes. And well, after watching some dev diaries and hearing about the history of the game, I kind of got a little concerned. The game's beta is just 1 month away, launching sometime in April for those who pre-ordered the game. This means there's not any time for major changes in gameplay or design in general. New World has been in development for 3 years, which is actually quite short for a giant MMO like this. Generally, you'd expect at least over 5 years, and even then, that's pretty much just foundation we're talking about. For the business model, they're running a buy-to-play style purchase, so you purchase it once, that's the game, no subscription, play it as much or as little as you want. With that, I would definitely assume every major content update is going to be paid DLC. So that's the world. Let's talk about the gameplay, which is stated to be heavily inspired by Dark Souls combat, and it looks, like I said, really good. It's an MMO that requires real attention to combat rather than just, say, cycling through your various special abilities. Every attack is going to count. Every bit of movement, your defense, your offense will be key to survival. It's real-time RPG-like combat in an MMO. I like that so much compared to most of every other MMO because there's no tab targeting on bars. It's like third person with hitboxes and much more action-based, having to aim your range attacks, physically land those melee blows, and dodge the enemies. Plus, gear and general leveling apparently won't affect combat nearly as much as your own skill and gameplay will. Stats obviously matter and make things easier, but anything's possible when you're good enough in a combat system like this one. I have never experienced that in an MMO before. We'll be using melee weapons, ranged weapons, and even magic, and interestingly, there's going to be no classes. Your character is actually based on the weapon they're using at that moment. You're just an explorer who can go in any direction. But the more you focus on one thing, of course, the better you are at it. You can swap between weapons and playstyle at any time, but like I said, the progress is linked to your weapon, so when you spent 100 hours with, say, I don't know, a sword, and then you swap to some magic, you might not be that good at it. Which makes me wonder about players who are jack of all trades and master of none, like a hybrid style, or a true master, say, with the bow. Who's going to be stronger? Who's going to have the advantage? In one of the dev blogs, they did actually explain that it will be limited or capped out. So you will reach a limit with your sword, and then you start using your bow, and eventually you reach a limit with that. So at end game, you should be able to use a few different weapons at the highest level and not be limited. And I really like that freedom of choice, but balance is going to be a huge concern with this system. If any build is particularly strong over others, well then yeah, most players will just go to that, they'll flock to that, and the interesting part of the system will be irrelevant. Managing this many playstyles is definitely going to be a challenge, but I hope they can do it. Amazon has tons of resources to fuel game development. No crowdfunding is needed here, right? So delays and failed promises on mechanics, general gameplay issues of, let's say, early access style games shouldn't really be expected here, let alone the core of any online game. If it flows correctly when we're at such large scale, there's going to be big battles, world battles, 50 versus 50 PvP. Lag in a game like this, if you're in a big massive scale fight with a combat system like this, would make it unplayable. Any major MMO launch day has problems like this, and since they're going for such a grand scale with everything, I hope that it works, because if anyone could handle it, it's probably Amazon, but hey, money does not fix everything. The world itself and its economy will be all player driven via player housing. The guilds known as companies and their player controlled territories will be fluid, with lots of opportunity for a unique MMO experience, or possibly a terrible one if big companies control everything, and if you're not in them playing with like a small guild with your friends, good luck with that. Who knows, maybe they balanced it well or foreseen that. I mean, I certainly hope they would. It could go very badly if they've not, though, in concept alone. Companies themselves are the guilds of the game, like I said, who are able to control territory and through that establish tax settlements, create forts to defend the land, and reap general rewards. Other companies who might want that land can fight for it, attempting to steal that territory through massive PvP battles. 50 versus 50 is the limit on these, to be exact. That's grand scale. This leaves a lot of the direction of PvP to be left up to the players. Who's fighting, when they fight, and where it happens. It's very unusual, which is why I kind of compare it to, let's say, Ark or Conan or even Rust, a sandbox MMO where you build the bases, you decide what's important and where, and then you fight over it. So far, the game has actually seen a core gameplay redesign once in its 3-year dev time. Unfortunately, it kind of seems like they're trying to please everyone, attempting to appeal to both the PvE and PvP audience. And, well, the two seem at complete odds with one another in this game. Take Blue Protocol as a good example. They've openly stated now that for the moment, PvE is their focus. They're trying to create a game that provides a great PvE experience. And even though it looks like it might be a great game for PvP one day, their focus is PvE, and that's what the game's for. Meanwhile, New World in its PvP is trying to tick every box that they can, not really refining any of these systems or doubling down on anything. They've changed their stance on PvP before. Originally, anyone could attack anyone, and you could lose all of your items. They could loot everything you have. Terrible if you're not a PvPer, and then some PvPer comes up and kills you, but pretty exciting if you are. And they've gone back on that first concept. Now they're using a mode known as War. These big 50 versus 50 battles. And then also open world PvP must be opted in, like most MMOs, but very comparable to World of Warcraft's War mode system, where you opt in, and then you can fight anyone else who's opted in as well. If you do opt in, you will get better rewards while you're vulnerable to attack. In the case of World of Warcraft, they give you more XP while leveling and other benefits too. So that lets the PvE players completely ignore PvP in this game should they want to. But what is the PvE endgame for a New World? At this time, apparently there's not going to be dungeons or raids to complete. Instead, you're just going to be doing world bosses, questing, and general group events in the world. Now, I've seen so many games do this system, and it's a cool idea. I remember Rift and the awesome concept that monsters would enter the land via portals that would randomly spawn around the map. And instead of being an exciting challenge that you occasionally face, it was kind of a consistent and constant clusterfuck. Enemies would spawn at a portal, and then you and 600 other players slam your head against your keyboards until the portal's closed and you've killed everything. Then you move to the next one that spawned nearby during this Rift battle you just completed. Overwhelming numbers crushing any exciting mechanic in an open world really takes the fun out of it. Raids that allow you to bring a select group, limited by a certain number, balanced to be fought by that number for a smoother, more intense experience compared to giant piles of players dogpiling one big boss enemy or event in an open world, which I personally find gets old really quickly. So right now it doesn't seem like there's much to the endgame PvE, and PvP, which it seems like should be the core and main focus of this game, a PvP focused sandbox MMO, has changed to opt-in, so you can completely ignore it if you want and just play the PvE, which, would be fine if their PvE systems weren't kind of lackluster on paper right now. They've cut off the core and interesting part of their PvP system. You could lose everything, traveling wherever you are, so you've got to be careful how and when you travel on this dangerous island. Don't get me wrong, maybe this PvP system where anyone could just murder you would be terrible, but I would have at least liked to see it because it sounds super unique. I've never played a game like that before. I'm not sure what the identity of this game is anymore. You know, what's the core that gets me excited? Take something like the absolute failure of Anthem. Mechanically, that was a terrible game. Total failure, right? But the original core concept, those Iron Man-like suits flying around the world, we were all interested based solely on that one good concept. What does New World have that's new and exciting about these systems? Visually, the game is interesting, and I do like the setup for it, but the actual systems and end game, I'm just not sure about. I hope they can address these concerns well, and we find ourselves with a great new MMO to play with a satisfying combat system to fuel PvP and PvE alike. But right now, I'm not sure. Does it matter though if a game is unique? The combat and base gameplay look good. I'm excited about playing it just for that. Maybe the systems around that don't really matter as much when the core of the game is, at the end of the day, fun. Maybe it doesn't have to be special and unique, but just a good game, and they can work the rest out later. What do you think about New World? With the beta right around the corner, perhaps we won't have to wait long to see where this game is going and see how these PvE and PvP systems really feel. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and this has been my little chat about New World. I'll see you guys in the next video.